Well, the life of Jason Warnock just got a lot more complex. If you don't know who he is, 29-year-old, he is the fellow who was photographed the other day dragging somebody else from an SUV dangling over a cliff in Lewiston. And then he left. He went to work. Police came by. He stayed at the scene until police got there and said, "I've got to go to work," and off he went. He's not looking to be a hero. Well, the photographs of him actually pulling the other man, the 23-year-old who was in the car, hanging at the edge of the cliff, the photograph of that actually went viral all over the world, and of course people started saying, "Hey, that's Jason." So now mainstream media has showed up at his doorstep and is probing him, and they'll likely look into every aspect of his life too as well. This is why people often don't do these Good Samaritan efforts any longer, because once you do, and then there's the big story about, well, this person did something very heroic. Isn't this wonderful? Then they start going around your neighborhood saying, "Say, when he was a kid," or they go look through all of your records, and the next thing you know, there's probably nothing wrong with this guy's life. 29 years old, he's probably led an exemplary life, but that's the problem. They will be looking for something now to try to bring down his heroic act a bit. That's how media works in this country. I really feel sorry for this guy because he's going to learn, really seriously, the meaning of getting probed. And right now, it's nice to have people come by and point a camera at you and say, "Describe what happened," and he's done that. But from here on out, his life is just going to get miserable. And what he should have done after they came knocking at his door was just say, "Nah, sorry, I did what I was supposed to do. Get out of here." It's 8:08. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story. Temperature right now, well, it's going to be a really nice weekend, other than a lot of clouds tomorrow, but back into the 70s, near 70 today. And the weather over the next several days does look very, very good. Much needed rain supposedly coming in at the end of next week. The weather forecast, when you talk, though, about long range, every meteorologist I ever worked with always told me, well, about 3 days out, we can tell you. Beyond 3 days, we only do these forecasts because people want it. They demand it. They want to know what my fiance, Suzanne, she will go to a website and she will look, and we had plans to go to a baseball game a couple of years ago, Memorial Day weekend in Washington, and we decided to make a trip out of it. We stopped at Rolling Thunder. We went to the cemetery, Arlington National Cemetery, and we went to see the Washington Nationals play the Philadelphia Phillies. So about a month and a half in advance, I bought the tickets for the ball game, and she said, "It's going to be possibly raining that weekend." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I looked up the weather online." I said, "Well, that's 6 weeks away. There is simply no way that anybody knows whether it is going to be sunny or rainy on that particular day." But it was on the internet, so we had to go along with that. As it turned out, it was a beautiful day, 70 degrees or so in the beautiful sunshine. But the weather folks tell you that you just cannot come up with a legitimate forecast beyond 3 days. But because people want it for their own planning purposes, they will post a 5-day or a 7-day forecast on websites. You want it, but on the other hand, if it's not accurate, then why do you go look at it and try to plan around it? You just simply can't do that. People do want some certainty in life, obviously. I understand that, but it doesn't always come your way. Can I tell you a quick story, too, as well? I've got a lot going on today, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. My friend, Lieutenant Colonel Steve Heil, is going to be joining us in an hour, and he's going to be talking about a situation. Yesterday, I opened the show talking about religious freedom, especially in the military, where it seems to be under fire. No pun intended there. But it is really, being a Christian, or being even what do you call it, the chaplains, being a chaplain in any of the armed services right now is very hazardous, because if you mention anything about your faith, you lose your chaplaincy. You get booted by the Pentagon. They throw you out, as if somehow you're expected to be silent about your own faith. Well, that's why you're there, right? The chaplain is there to talk about these issues. Nope, can't do it any longer. It's not politically correct, so they're being given the short shrift. There's a survey out, and it made Drudge, was the lead on Drudge for a while yesterday afternoon. It's moved on a couple of stories now. Back in 2009, President Obama said he was going to work on improving morale in the U.S. military. Well, 6 years later, a survey has been done, and there is no improvement in morale. It is worse. The troops do not trust their superiors, who are all politically correct, handpicked now by the White House, as this military has become more and more politicized. They just don't understand why these people in uniform have these attitudes. And apparently, there's the old line, The beatings will continue until morale improves. We're seeing something akin to that going on in the U.S. military. Steve served 20 years in the U.S. Air Force. And when he was a young officer, he was once tasked with driving J.C. McConnell to a meeting. J.C. McConnell had been Air Force Chief of Staff during the mid-1960s. And at the meeting, he also got to meet General Curtis LeMay. LeMay had just shortly before that retired, and McConnell had replaced him. Steve wrote a blog post the other day about some of these anti-Christian shenanigans going on in the Air Force, and he said, LeMay is about ready to rise from the grave and turn things around. So I asked him to come on the program today. He'll be joining us just after the 9 o'clock news and sharing some of his thoughts about that. He also was telling me last week about Mike Krzyzewski. The two of them were classmates when they were in graduate school at the University of Indiana. And Krzyzewski made a speech to some military officers a couple of weeks ago after the Duke Blue Devils won basketball's national championship. College basketball. We should make that clear for the public school graduates who may be out there. And Krzyzewski really dressed down the White House during his speech. Steve says it's not the first time it happened. He said that Coach K, back in his days at Indiana University, used to do it to the professors as well. So we'll have some details coming up on that in the next hour. Also, Magic Valley, well, we have a chorale society that is really quite popular in this area. A guest coming by at 8:30, she'll spend a few minutes talking about an event this weekend and tell you how to get some last-minute tickets if you're interested in going. There's also an event going on at the College of Southern Idaho tomorrow involving some students in the veterinary program, and it's a dog wash. And for those of us I had a dog one time, big dog, who did not like bathing. And man, was it difficult. The dog had no problem swimming, but if you wanted to give the dog a bath, and that dog I'd have to wrestle with it, and it did not like it. And if I turned just for a minute to look in the other direction, Rusty would jump out of the tub and go racing through the house, suds and water everywhere. So sometimes it's nice to have someone else take care of this for you, and that's why we have these students coming by today. They'll tell us some details in just a few minutes. I also wanted to mention one other quick thing, too, before I moved on, and I'd like to thank the people. There's an organization called Salt and Light Radio that's in operation here in the Twin Falls area, but actually it's part of a network all across the state of Idaho. Being radio, though, it doesn't end at the state line. I mean, there's obviously radio signals. They do cross into other states and sometimes other countries. Salt and Light Radio is the voice of Roman Catholicism in Idaho and likely among some of our neighboring states because people can hear it, just across state lines in Montana and in Utah, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington as well, and perhaps even British Columbia. They were doing a fundraiser similar to a pledge drive, called it a fundraiser, and they've been doing this the last several days because it's a not-for-profit operation, and it's really just targeting people of a certain Christian faith. And I wanted to drop by yesterday and just see what they were doing because they yesterday did all of the programming here in Twin Falls. So I dropped by the studio that they have, and I got to sit in for an hour, and my pastor actually hosted the program. And I was listening to him as he was talking with some of his guests. Number one, he's great at doing an interview, to the point you would think that he was a professional when it came to media. And he's also very quick on his feet, which is clearly a plus when you're doing a radio broadcast. And as I was watching him, it dawned upon me that I am glad he found another vocation in life because I don't need the competition. And he does not do this every day, which is a good thing for me. But I had a pleasure sitting in and listening for an hour yesterday afternoon. And I hope someday we'll have an opportunity to talk to some of the folks from that project on our show because they don't directly compete with us. They're not selling advertising, and they're not looking for ratings. They don't do any of those things. The only ratings they care about are the ones that come in the afterlife. So at some point, we'll probably be chatting with some of them on this show as well in the next several months. And I just have to tell you, if you have not yet heard about their mission, and I would actually encourage this. There are faith-based radio stations all over the country. I had an opportunity to go to work for something called K-Love back in 2006, which is more geared toward evangelicals and a lot of music, but they needed a news director based out of Kentucky. I didn't get the job because, as it turns out, I was of the wrong denomination. And when I revealed that to them, all of a sudden they said, "We don't like the way you sound." I was going to board myself. Yes, I was going to, go in, and when I got into the studio, lock the door behind me and hammer some boards along the wall so they couldn't get in, and then I was going to turn on the microphone to recite the rosary 24/7. Yes, I was going to hijack their effort, as if that would happen. But I'm telling you right now, there are a lot of really great efforts out there to reach people. And we need it because, as we have been discussing on the air yesterday, and we will a little later today, and really we do this maybe a couple times per week, people of faith in this country are clearly being, I won't say the word is oppressed, not yet, but we are very, very close to seeing perhaps something akin to forcing us underground. Maybe not a pogrom where people are going to be out looking to kill us, but I can see where in the future certain acts of refusal could land you in jail, could put you away in prison, or could force you to practice your faith somewhere way out in the middle of the forest. And it's happened before. It's happened in various places around the world. And we say, well, that can't happen in America. Look, folks, the America that I knew 40, 50 years ago, was when I was a small boy, is not really the same America that we see today. And I think most of us know that. I think we know deep down in our own, the pits of our own stomachs, that is what we happen to be dealing with. And frankly, a lot of the problems we have in this country today are related to the culture just going completely haywire in the 1960s and spinning out of control. And it started to accelerate again in the 1990s. There was a setback for a while during the Reagan years when you had a lot of college students who were suddenly young Republicans. And they were interested in not only the conservative economic aspects of the movement, but also in the traditional aspects of how you live your life. Well, all of these radio stations, whether they be evangelical Protestant, whether they be Baptist or Methodist, Presbyterian or Roman Catholic or Mormon, I think that you've got to recognize they are doing great work. Because if only one person hears what's going on and says, I'm going to make a change in my life, that's a victory. That's a victory for those people at those radio stations. So I would urge you, if you can, support them as best you can. And I just, I'll let that sit there for today and let you consider that. And perhaps maybe deep down in, you can find, I should note this too. I'm going to mention this a little later in the program. Red states are far more charitable than blue states. There was some evidence of that conducted by a researcher at a major university 10 years ago. Some new research is again backing that up. Nothing has changed on that count. Liberals don't like to hear that, but they're about the stingiest people in the country when it comes to giving to charitable causes. 43 at our studios. Nice quick warm-up going on today, 20 minutes after 8 o'clock. Hope to be talking to some guests from the College of Southern Idaho in just a couple of minutes. And Bill Colley with you. I should point that out. If I haven't already mentioned that, that is my name, Colley. Bill.Colley@townsquaremedia.com is my email address. We've got plenty more on the way.